The collapse of South Africa's provinces stems from poor service delivery, lack of maintenance to state-owned properties, declining quality of life owing to poor infrastructure, and a lack of new private investment leading to ghost towns in certain places. All of South Africa's provinces face similar challenges, but the Western Cape has the best maintained provincial infrastructure. Maintaining state property in good condition throughout its life cycle is essential for these assets to make a meaningful contribution to improving residents' quality of life on the one hand, and ensuring that they do not pose a health and safety hazard. The Department of Infrastructure in the Western Cape is the custodian of significant assets, including buildings, provincial roads, and bridges. In this episode, the Western Cape Minister of Infrastructure, Mr. Tertius Simmers, unpacks the work that his department is doing to ensure that this key component of service delivery is well taken care of. As always, though, we want you to be a part of these conversations by driving the narrative and asking questions. You can do so by dropping us a text or voice note to 0829 913 913. You can also, of course, engage directly with the Minister through his social media platforms, primarily on X. You can find the Minister using the tag at @min_T Simmers. That's TSIMMERS, and then using the hashtag Community Matters. Minister, welcome to the 7th episode of Community Matters, and of course, an opportunity once again for you to document the progress being made by your department.
Indeed, thank you for the opportunity to all of this that are listening to all our syndicated radio stations, but also those that are streaming.
Now, capacity is always a big conversation, particularly capacity in government. And obviously we talk about planning and strategies, but without capacity, execution is obviously a challenge. And so I'm wondering from your department's perspective, and I guess you touched on some of that in the earlier answer, how important is capacity?
No, indeed, if I reflect on the year under review, you need to understand that all of that is only made possible when you have a capable workforce. We, in the other 8 provinces, we obviously see the antithesis of what I'm talking about, because you see infrastructure failing because there's no capable workforce that actually does the work of maintenance and expanding the infrastructure base. So we have invested heavily as a department in our people within our department, but also acknowledging the partnerships in terms of the SMMEs and the emerging contractors. All of them play a role in our success in terms of maintaining but also expanding our asset base in its various formats across the province. So we have built internal capacity. We are continuously doing so. We are doing targeted hiring, attracting new young skills into our various branches across our portfolio. But we've also been restructuring as a department because infrastructure is not stagnant, so which means my portfolio is not a stagnant portfolio, but more so how we modernize our ICT platforms, because we are focusing on the artificial intelligence as part of creating and expanding our capacity to not only project where maintenance is needed, but also where we will be expanding our portfolio. So we have built up what we call the PSP unit within the department, and their main focus is how do we reform further segments of our portfolio, how do we bring private capital to actually accelerate our ability to maintain and our ability to expand on our portfolio. But we've also invested in partnering with key tertiary institutions, even funding new programs in those institutions to focus on complexity studies, to focus on futures learning, because both of these are key fields as infrastructure is reshaping and reforming in all of its place. Also understanding that the budget needs to be there. The budget needs to focus, but in a specific way where we want to take infrastructure across our province. So indeed, but all of this is linked to a culture journey which we have been on for the last 2 years, and it is ongoing. It's building guardrails as part of that culture journey to ensure that our staff are well equipped. They are enthused to be able to be part of this journey of change and journey of maintaining what we've inherited. But we have also been focusing, how do we find innovative ways to maintain our assets? How do we use innovative ways to address the issue of problem solving? Because our infrastructure portfolio is becoming more complex due to the migration to our shores. I think the part of our portfolio which speaks to the urgency which we need to focus on is our acceleration in our human settlements portfolio. Given that year on year we see migration of just over 150,000 people annually onto the shores of our province. So you can imagine the need for settlement development, and just in terms of be it a service site or handing over the housing opportunity, the key, that's just over 7,500 opportunities. People getting a site or getting a house, which is a roof over their head, but also being able to hand over just under 1,400 title deeds. Again, as we create opportunities, we need to create opportunity for ownership, which is the true form of unlocking the future potential for our citizens in the Western Cape. But then we come to the softer side, the pipeline of skills development, the pipeline where we focus on our apprenticeships, because if you want to build the future, you must create the empowered workforce for that future. So in terms of bursaries, which means this is not just the Masaki Sizwe program, but also other forms of bursaries, which we do focus on, just over 150 opportunities in terms of bursaries. Then in terms of the NISP program, the NYS program, over 325 young people will afford the opportunity. But we also provide opportunities in terms of apprenticeships, but also emerging contractors. And here we assisted over 126 for the year under review. Noting all of this is funded through our own funding, barring the NYS program, which is a national program. So we've built faster for the year under review. We have maintained our road network to ensure that that which we are known for is still intact. But we've also built partnerships to accelerate, and obviously in our annual report we touch on the new forms of partnerships which we have focused on for the year under review, while we also ensure that we shift opportunities to all of our people in the Western Cape. But in all of this, how do we take the citizen along on this journey? How does service delivery remain citizen-centric while we are confronted with very technical aspects within our portfolio? And not just being too heavily reliant on being compliant, in being too focused on the bureaucratic side of our responsibility, but how do we take the citizen along on this journey? Because capacity for us is not just internal, it's how do we capacitate our communities to take ownership of the upgrades we are doing, the maintenance work we are doing, but also the expansion of our portfolio. Because if you have an active citizenry that are part of this journey, the logic is ultimately that they also assist in addressing the lack of capacity amongst themselves on why they need to protect our assets, so it can last longer, because the funding is getting less, but we must still maintain, we must still upgrade, and we must still expand.
Now, we've of course touched on the important role that I guess the state property maintenance plays in attracting investors to the province. Give us a sense of the kind of state property that your department is responsible for.
Yes, no, indeed. As the minister and my department, we are actually the custodians of all provincial land and buildings. I'm possibly the biggest landlord in all districts as I sit here, to be quite honest.
No pressure.
No pressure. We have 5,000 provincial land parcels. We have about 2,100 facilities. When I talk about facilities, I'm talking about district offices, be they health, be they education, be they DSD, be they even agriculture. These are facilities that are under my management or my portfolio's management, which means we need to look at their maintenance and so forth. But we also play a supportive role to the Provincial Department of Education and Health, which means some of these schools, I'm talking about schools, I'm talking about hospitals, clinics, office space. We even assist courts where we are asked to do so, and even depots because of our roads model that we have in the province. All of these are assets which we need to look after. But we've also, and we're the only provincial department in government that does this, is to ensure that our buildings are actually green accredited, energy efficiency, water usage gets reduced, that we optimally utilize our office space to ensure maximum output and productivity of our workforce. In terms of energy efficiency, we've started introducing different ways of when we retrofit our windows, for instance. We have also introduced solar PV systems, battery-operated systems that store the additional energy. So as you can hear, it's more than just having the asset. It's how to optimally ensure that asset is maintained optimally, but functions optimally in the interest of the citizens of our province. But we're also the only province that does actually conditional assessments of our asset base, which it tells us which office space needs to be modernized, where repairs are needed. We work out a maintenance and repair program according to these assessments. so that ultimately you as the taxpayer get the best value for money from the asset which we've purchased on your behalf to service you wherever you live across our province. But we're also focusing on refurbishment of our asset base, which is very important to us, and we're now focusing on the upgrading of the asset base, because as we introduce artificial intelligence, we do need to ensure that the asset base also is ready for the next journey of change, which is artificial intelligence in our asset base across this province.
Now, talk to us about the investment that your department intends making during this financial year towards maintaining and preserving some of the properties that you're responsible for.
Yes, look, indeed, actively for the new financial year, we have just under 1,100 projects across our province. A phenomenal portfolio of projects to command, a budget that must fund it, and a project timeline that is quite stringent, which means we need to be on budget and in time. That is non-debatable for me as the minister. So ultimately, what we have done for the year, we are focusing on new builds in terms of bridges and roads. It's important. We need to expand our asset base. Again, we are seeing semigration to our shores, which means the incumbent network will never be sufficient to address an ever-growing population. We have planned maintenance, and again, I do want to plead and use this opportunity to plead to our road users. Please, when a road is closed, it's closed for a specific purpose. Please adhere to the rule of law. There will be stop and goes. Take a coffee with a nice cool drink, spend a bit of time, enjoy the asset base, look at the nice scenic Western Cape routes, where some of these stop and goes will be. But we are also ensuring at the moment that we are in planning phase in terms of roads, human settlements, but also general infrastructure. So we are in the designing phase, because my portfolio also needs to ensure there's a continuous pipeline of projects into the future, and that starts in the current financial cycle where we are in. We are also, because we do play different roles for the Department of Health and Education, as I've previously said, so we do have a signed agreement with the Department of Education, but also the Department of Health. So you will see us focusing on the upgrading of certain schools, the maintenance of certain schools, the upgrading of certain clinics, and yes, the introduction and delivery of new health facilities across our province. In all of this, it's also doing general facility assessments, which is part of our annual program. For this year, linked to all of this, jobs is at the core focus area for us. So we've set ourselves the target of creating 800 job opportunities. Again, if you think about it, we have 1,100 active projects. So it's just to create 800 work opportunities. That's nearly a job opportunity for every project site across this province as I'm sitting here. We have ensured that we will, over the next MTF cycle, invest 98 billion rand over the next decade, like we have done in the previous decade. Why? Because our portfolio is the biggest economic multiplier in terms of investment. For every billion rand we spend, billions comes to the private sector, to our shores. So if we've spent 98 billion rand over the last decade, and we plan to do 98 billion and more over the next decade, imagine the multiplier effect for our province and the number of job opportunities that will be created in partnership. Obviously, the biggest flagship which you will see in this kind of new financial year coming live and being handed over in this current cycle is the Van Scoorersdrift project. We also have the Baden-Powell project. The third phase we have handed over recently already, and we are seeking to go now to the next phase of that. So for us, it's maintaining our asset base, expanding our asset base. That is a key strategy which will drive the asset portfolio, increasing the value of our asset portfolio, but also now shifting towards catalytic projects, which means they are worth 1 billion and upwards. That is our investment focus for the new financial year.
Wow. It's quite extensive. With that being said then, if you have any questions or comments, please send them through on the WhatsApp line on 0829 913 913. Now, Minister, we have seen this across the country where ghost towns appear as a result of poor economic infrastructure, unmaintained economic infrastructure. And it's, I guess, not as at the core of a lot of these conversations around the economic impact of these towns. I'm wondering, from your perspective as the Minister of Infrastructure in the Western Cape, how you've ensured that your team doesn't fall short in unlocking economic infrastructure opportunities in the province, so that we don't see in the Western Cape what we've seen happen in other parts of the country.
No, indeed, I mean, I can't bemoan this or re-emphasize this on every show that we do have. Economic infrastructure is the backbone of investment into even our deepest rural communities of our province, because they create jobs for all of our people. Understanding that the Western Cape is a very big province, and there are still very, very, very deep rural towns where, as a provincial government, we play a major role in ensuring the sustainability of those communities, but also creating the opportunity for the private sector to come and invest within them. So just if you look at the importance of the health portfolio in the number of rural communities, that's key, because again, we create new facilities, we maintain current facilities, and in all of this, jobs are created for that local Platteland community, which is why, I mean, for the 25-26 cycle which we are in, there are no fewer than 45 projects across our province. A phenomenal achievement, given these budgets are declining and we're still managing to maintain this. This is a 1.8 billion rand that's committed over 3 years, so that's 600 million rand going just to the rural areas of our province over the next 3 years per year, ensuring sustainable job opportunities are created. And through that, you have private sector partners seeing this and also coming to these Platteland communities. Another one, and when I look at the city of Cape Town, Ravensmead CDC, again, local labor was used, local SMEs are being empowered, and this also shows the care part of our portfolio, because we bring also services closer to our people. But the biggest driver of job opportunities of our entire portfolio is roads. They create dozens of work, hundreds of opportunities. I'm not even talking about the secondary job opportunities. That's just the main job opportunities which this portfolio creates. But we are also having a proactive approach to our portfolio. Again, observing what other provinces sadly are going through, where ghost towns are created. And that is where we are seeking to prevent the decline of these communities by investing in terms of our road infrastructure, looking at the health facilities, looking at the education facilities, assisting DSD to expand their footprint where we have land or buildings available. Again, creating opportunities, but the softer side of my portfolio as well, in partnership with our sister departments, and through that, attracting private sector and private capital to come to those communities as well.
Now, we know, of course, that the provincial government leases several properties to individuals, and I'm wondering if you could perhaps just reflect on some of the challenges that you may encounter as it relates to them trying to maintain some of these properties that are leased out.
Well, like I said, we're probably the biggest landlord in the province, and again, it's a vast portfolio to look at, and getting the basic principles of leasing and landlord is quite important to us, given we do want to minimize the cost of refurbishment and the cost of upgrading. So what we do is, when we do lease some of our own buildings, we ensure that they are ready to deliver the services for which they are being leased out, that they unlock economic opportunities, but also that they maintain our asset base into the future. Which is why, in the contract which you give to landlords who lease from us, it is compulsory upon them to ensure that they ensure the structural integrity of our asset in the way that we've handed it over to them, that they have a regular internal maintenance program as a landlord, utilizing our asset base, but also that they comply under the common law with what is required of them. Obviously, we have seen instances where there are severe unplanned damages to these assets, which is why we then seek to intervene and also ensure that our asset is maintained, and that we treat it as a strategic part of our responsibility to ensure that the asset is kept at an optimal level as far as possible, even though our budget is declining to do so. We also identify deferred maintenance costs as part of our portfolio, where we ask ourselves, what can we do later? What can the landlord who is leasing from us focus on later? Because we also need to ensure that we do not shorten the asset's life cycle and life usability which we do actually are responsible for. But in all of this, we do emphasize the importance of routine maintenance. That is a routine maintenance plan, but also that prior to the investment in that portfolio, or that part of our portfolio, that service failure at all times is prevented as far as possible.
Yeah. A reminder then that we want you to be a part of these conversations by driving the narrative, sending through your questions. You can do so, of course, by sending them through on WhatsApp on 0829913 You can also, of course, engage directly with the Minister using the various social media platforms, in particular X. You'll find him at MIN_T Simmers. That's MINT_TSIMMERS. And then using the hashtag Community Matters. Now, Minister, how much planning goes into preparing for, and I guess this is perhaps a challenging question, but how much planning goes into preparing for recovery efforts when some of the infrastructure properties or that your department is responsible for is impacted by or destroyed by natural disasters?
And indeed, we've had back-to-back financial years, and I'm referring to obviously the roads part of our portfolio. So indeed, we do plan for climate resilient recovery, but we are doing this being well aware that we also need to protect fiscal stability, because the budgets are getting less, but you need to ensure that your asset is still maintained. So what we have done, and we do multi-year planning of our projects way in advance, being well aware that in that specific cycle you might get an unheard of flood, which we've seen now 2 years back to back prior to the previous financial year, where we were actually flabbergasted by the scale of what we had to deal with. So what we do is, and I'll just focus on some of the completed recovery projects which we've had to do. Most of you can recall the St. Helena Bay, Stompnies Bay project again. We planned for that, but we've had to actually adapt and accelerate what we had to do there. We still are stuck with the Hemel en Aarde road, which we saw an entire river's flow shift, which means we had to shift and not just prepare but build back better and stronger, and that is ongoing. So it's done over a multi-year cycle because of the change in the river flow for Hemel en Aarde.
Minister, how much planning goes into preparing recovery efforts rather when some of these properties get destroyed by natural disasters?
No, indeed, but we need to understand when we talk about properties, we also talk about our road network and also the other facilities which we do need to look after. Yes, as a provincial department, we do plan to ensure that we are climate resilient, since our recovery time must be quick enough so that the asset base can be reutilized in record time. But we also need to understand that we do this while we also need to protect the fiscal stability of my department, because the budget is getting less, but we still need to ensure a functional province. And for the year under review, there have been some key projects which we've actually completed. Noting that prior to that, we had 2 financial years which were back-to-back in terms of floods. At one stage, 70% of our road network was actually shut down for a short period of time. And people can recall the Ashton flooding. Yeah. We managed to build a world-class Ashton Bridge, which is now world-renowned. People embossed my department and myself for doing that, but now that community is not cut off. I can go to Bonnievale where we saw a bridge being rebuilt in 21 days. Show me any other province that can actually say that. When we look at areas like Calitzdorp and Oudtshoorn, again, where we had to rebuild and reconnect in a matter of days, where in other provinces they are still actually determining the cost just to bring back better. But all of this comes at a massive cost, and just for the year 24-25, the flooding that happened in April to July 2024, that was 1.8 billion rands of damage. We didn't even get half of that money back from the national department. So the choice is then, how do we determine what gets prioritized and what is the purpose, which links to your focus on ensuring that our asset base is functional, that we recover and open it up, the flow of traffic, and get kids back to school and so forth. So firstly, we look at network importance when it comes to the road network, which is why Hemel en Aarde, as much as the river changed course, we are still, we're not just repairing, we are building back better, because now we are well aware that the environment, but most of the climate in that environment has changed. Our thought line, how we need to address Hemel en Aarde matter. And we also need to ensure that when we do prioritize the network in terms of the importance, that we reallocate budget and resources so it can happen as quickly as possible. But of course, having 2 consecutive years of flooding, it does change the way that we redesign, and it also shapes our future designs of our asset base. It also determines a new approach to the maintenance of our asset base, but also how we respond and how quickly we need to address it. And the Premier coins it, we are building back stronger. In our case, it's building back stronger at speed. And that is the standard which we have set for ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, we've also seen, the flooding in Ceres has cut off that town, and some other farming communities across the Western Cape as well. I'm wondering, from your perspective, what would be a highlight of, the work that your department has done? Would it be the building a bridge in 21 days?
And counting. We try to go quicker. No. Look, indeed, we have a very close relationship with the rural parts of our province, because we know agriculture plays a phenomenal role in those towns, which means the routes need to be up and running very quickly. And Ceres, I'll use the entire Ceres basin because it's a very vast provincial network which supports agriculture in that regard. And at one stage in 2024, there were a number of communities cut off due to floods. And the fact that we restored access for those communities, which is the first and important thing which we focused on, but we've also managed to rebuild. And I'll just use some of the examples from the Ceres basin for our viewers and our listeners. For instance, the Durance community, 90 million rand was spent. We managed to rebuild back in record time new bridges, 7 of them and counting. We have been ensured that the low water bridges, which might be less important for us here in Cape Town, but for the farming community, that is part of the 90 million which we did. Obviously, Municipal Road 191, which we will all know is the Citrusdal Road. The 1 year we repaired one part of the road, and guess what? The next year, a new flood, another part of the road washed away. Not the same part, I must emphasize, but we needed to build back better. We needed to create bigger culverts, unlike we've ever seen before. And we need to understand that when we talk about that, we speak about how do we improve the drainage to ensure that it doesn't clog up and damages another part of that. We need to stabilize the slopes. Again, part of this was not our work because the flood was ultimately caused by poor river routine maintenance, which is not our function. It's the National Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environmental Affairs. So they needed to step up, and the Department of Water and Sanitation, because they're the custodian with that department. We also needed to ensure that we do that in a record pace because people needed to get access to work. I touched on the Hemel en Aarde, where we saw a river change course for the first time in 100 years. You can't just repair, you must build back. And part of building back is also maintaining the other components lower down the Hemel en Aarde, which you don't even see as part of the main network. We've had to rebuild low water bridges, which were reopened actually in the current financial year. We had to put stop and goes in place, and I must tell you how many emails I get about the stop and goes, and I think to myself, what you do not understand, we need to ensure the safety of that network. We understand the agricultural sector needs to utilize our road network, but many a times what I have seen is not what the road user sees. You still see the layer of asphalt on top, but then there's nothing underneath, like in Hemel en Aarde. It's been gobbled away by a river which flowed at over 100 kilometers an hour at one stage. People do not see that, and that's why we tend to upload them to social media, the pictures which we want them to see. So look, this is why we are doing what we are doing. Then, of course, we also are dealing with new designs that is needed again, and I do want to thank the agricultural sector as a partner, where we are explaining to them, look, we need to not just repair, we need to rebuild and future-proof your asset for you. So I would love to use this opportunity to actually thank the agricultural sector for understanding that we're not just building back, we are building back stronger, but building back stronger and faster.
Yeah. Now, supply chain management is key in all of this, arguably, because, if you want maintenance done, with capable service providers at a faster pace, there needs to be those processes need to be in place. How has, that process been like for you guys at the Department of Infrastructure?
Now, indeed, I mean, if you think about this about my department, more than 80% of our entire budget goes to delivery, which means 80% of a multi-billion rand budget goes into the procurement process. And if you take into consideration the predecessor department, we've now had almost 15 years of clean audits, supply chain spotless, which does tell you that we have a supply chain that has been fine-tuned to enable fast, compliant, efficient processes, which focuses on maintenance contractors and also empowering ensuring that they are capable contractors getting these awards. But in all of this, we also need to uphold transparency, given the big issue which is in the rest of the country in terms of procurement. So I'll use a practical example. In 23-24 cycle, we had 53 limited bids, and sometimes you do need to follow a limited process to get the best outcome, because certain projects is only an X number of service providers.
Yeah.
You can't conjure up or create more of them, so we do need to follow limited bids. This is made publicly accessible, so which is why I'm talking about transparency. And all 53 of these were transparent for that financial year. They created jobs, but also they unlocked delivery capacities, which we understand is needed for those communities. And above all, our supply chain process ensures that we pay all of our service providers on time, because we know we are stimulating the SMME market, and we know that for them, money being on time is crucial, because they are employing a lot of people that are dependent on them. So in any given month, we process, I believe, and I asked the HD before coming here, what's been our record month so far? 920 million rand was paid out on time within 30 days, some within 14 days after receiving the invoices, because we understand the importance of the supply chain process and what it unlocks for our SMMEs as well. Where we have seen a bit of delays, and it's less than 0.1% of a multi-billion rand payout every month. This is where invoices are not submitted timeously, or they lack a bit of detail. Now, we have been getting clean audits for a reason. We comply with all our processes. So the less than 0.1%, which we are not being able to pay in 14 or 30 days, is because it's not our own fault, but it's part of the process. But it also speaks to the efficacy of our supply chain processes, being able to pick up these minute issues. Whereas in other provinces, they pay out millions of rands only to realize it was actually meant to be thousands. To use an example. So we are building more and more mitigating mechanisms to lower even our risks. So we can have a 100% compliance system, which pays out either in 14 days or in 30 days. But we are proud that we comply with the minimum requirement of 30 days, even though we have proven a lot more effective, given the sheer size of what my portfolio deals with on a monthly basis.
Certainly going to be getting more bids after this, Minister.
But be compliant.
Now, this week, of course, the Western Cape will be hosting an inaugural Western Cape Investment Summit 2025. And I'm wondering, how do you want your department, I guess, to benefit from this global event?
And look, we need to understand that the investment summit actually aligns with our overall growth for jobs strategy. And that is, how do we create a province with a 1 trillion rand economy by 2035? That is our main objective. And the only way that you can reach your objective is having and attracting foreign and partnerships, investment into our province. And we are known as a province which a lot of multinational corporations want to invest in. A lot of multinational companies want to find themselves in this province because of that. Now, the HOD and myself and our key leadership, we will be present there. We actually are going to have our own stall there to engage investors. But also, we will be going live with what you and I discussed a few shows back, was the single investment pipeline. That will go live in its virtual format as I've committed. We will be the first provincial government and probably the first provincial department that will be able to do that. We are going to visit and arrange site visits for our partners while they are here, because many of them want to see the portfolio. They want to see what growth for jobs entails in terms of infrastructure in this case. And we have received a request, given that it's 7 partners, sister provinces that will also be part of this process from other countries, to be quite honest. And they will be bringing the business sector and the business chambers to be part and attend the investment summit. But also, we have shown that we have a FDI pipeline that is ready. That just needs a suitable partner, and my colleague, Minister Meyer, is charged in playing the matchmaker, finding a suitable partner with the funding for a specific project, because both of us realize that infrastructure is a key enabler here. It's the common denominator for the economic objective into the future. But it's also how do we, and a lot of multinational companies have actually expressed interest even prior to the investment summit. So it's finding that opportunity to convert their interests into funding, which will come into our province, but also focusing it on high impact projects. It's one thing to talk about a portfolio, then you have 1,000 projects. But you have a focused project pipeline and saying, look, these are the first 100 projects which are project ready, invest in our province. And that is what the Investment Summit will seek to do. Giving focus to our sector, focusing on growth for jobs, but also showing the rest of the world. This is a provincial government which is ready to compete, but also attract world partners to our shores.
Perhaps that's a good note for us to conclude the conversation for today, Minister. A reminder to our listeners, though, that they can be a part of these conversations and ask questions, of course, through the WhatsApp line, primarily on 082-9913-913. You can also, as mentioned, engage with the Minister directly on his social media platforms. In particular, on X, you can visit the Minister at the handle at @MIN_T Simmers. That's TSIMMERS, and then using the hashtag Community Matters. Minister, thank you once again for your time and everything all the best.
Thank you very much, and hopefully I will see some of you at the Investment Summit.
We look forward to it. Thank you.